guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I'm here with somebody I have so much respect for, the king of rubber band magic, the legend that is Joe Rindfleisch. How you doing, Joe? You okay?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I've gone on record. I'm on a mission on this YouTube channel to try and convince magicians to do more rubber band magic and more elastic band magic. It's something that I think more magicians should be doing. And I've done lots of videos about that sort of thing. So to have you on here, who is literally leading the charge from the front when it comes to creating innovative, really mind-boggling rubber band magic, it means a lot. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So let's start before we start talking about rubber bands. And by the way, before we start, is it rubber bands or elastic bands? Some people say rubber, some people, what do you reckon?
I say rubber bands.
Perfect. You would know. Right.
Yeah.
So before we start talking about rubber bands, let's start at the very beginning. When did you get into magic? Was it as a kid and you got a magic set? Was it that traditional story?
So, okay, so the story goes, my very first, influence in magic was my grandfather. He basically did this thing with a knife where he took a piece of paper and he put it on the knife. He had two knives and he would put them behind his back and bring them back, and it would change places, and it was really cool. He would make one go over to the other, so there were two on there now, and it was really cool. And then I thought nothing of it, and but that was my first influence in magic, where I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then just, that was it. And then when I got older, a bunch of our friends would get together and play cards to all hours of the night. I must have been about 17. And we would play spades. And near the end of the night, we're talking like 3 o'clock in the morning, after playing card games, they would take out the cards and start doing card tricks. And this one guy did this amazing trick. Now, I wouldn't even consider him to be an amateur magician. He was just someone that dabbled, that knew some of the basic stuff. And he showed this trick called the ash trick, where ultimately, he basically said, tell me when to stop here, take a card. I took the card, I wrote it on a piece of paper. I burned the paper into an ashtray, and then he took the ashes and rubbed it on his forearm, and lo and behold, the card appeared on his forearm. And I was just completely blown away. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I really wanted to know. Now, the funniest thing is, if he would have told me right then and there, maybe I would have never became a magician. I don't know. Okay. But he said, well, they have this thing in magic where a magic trick is told when a magic trick is sold. If you want to learn that, you give me $60 and I'll teach you the lesson. Right. And I said, nah, I don't know. I'm 17 years old. I don't know. I'm not sure if I even have a job at that point. I'm not sure. But I was like, I'm not paying $60 for that. I then, maybe there was some time that went by, but ultimately I found myself in a magic store. No, I'm sorry, in a used bookstore in Montclair, New Jersey, scouring through the magic sections, trying to figure out how it was done. And I must have spent about maybe 3 or 4 hours in the bookstore, and I was able to find out how he was able to get the name on the arm. But for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how he knew that I was going to pick that card. That was the thing that was not, okay, I understand he put that on beforehand, but how would he know that I was going to pick that card? Well, there is a magic store that's by my house, or was by my house. It's no longer there. It's called Mecca Magic. And I went in there and I told him about this, and he hands me a book, Royal Road to Card Magic. He goes, what you want to know is in this book. And he showed me the section that I needed to read. And that basically started off. That day, I think I bought sponge balls. I bought this Tenyo trick where it was like a paddle trick with a swirly thing where you shake it and it looks like a coin appears, and then there's really a coin on there. I bought that day. Then there was Crazy Spots, which was another 10, it was like a blue thing where you open it up, it changes position, and then it changes completely. That was another trick I bought that day. Like, these are the things that cemented the biting of the magic bug. And I think I bought sponge balls and a pamphlet by Frank Garcia on sponge ball magic. And that was the start of my whole magic fascination.
And then did you very quickly like get immersed with it? Because a lot of people don't realize, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, a lot of people know you as a rubber band guy, but you are a true student of magic. Like, you know everything more than a lot of people realize. So is that where that started?
Well, before I answer that, I just wanted you to know that once that happened, I took all that stuff and I really started practicing a lot. I mean, hours and hours and hours a day. And that's what really became the most fascinating thing to me at that time of my life, was to do magic. And I would do it, 7, 8 hours a day, practicing, getting better. Well, I do want to finish off the story, which is I met back with that guy about 6 months later, the guy that showed me the trick. And as you saw earlier, right, when I said, he had me pick a card, I said, here, let me show you a trick. So I take the cards and I spread them out. I said, here, take any card at all. He takes a card. I said, okay, write it on a piece of paper. Give me the ashes. I do this, and the card is on my arm. He's like, I know about how you did this on your arm, but how did you get me to pick that card? I said, you have $60?
That's great.
True story.
That's awesome. That is brilliant. That is so cool. And so you started, so we're at this point where you really kind of got into magic. You've got the magic bug, you're buying magic, you're buying books. Did you gravitate towards one particular style of magic at the very, very beginning, or did you want to just learn everything?
So I bought a lot of books, and there were VHS tapes back then. And so I started, watching videos and things like this, but mainly it was books. And it was mostly card and coin magic. That was mainly the thing back then.
Okay.
That was my fascination.
And obviously, for those of you that don't know you, you have performed. I mean, you perform all over the world. You lecture all over the world. You've created a lot of magic, but you chose not to go down the route of full-time magician, which is a question that comes up an awful lot on this channel, which is, oh, should I become a full-time pro, or should I not become a full-time pro? And I've talked about it before, and we mentioned it off camera. Some of the best magicians in the world are people that aren't full-time pros, because when you go full-time pro, you know, doing magic is what you do to pay the mortgage, to put the house, or roof over your house. And so you end up having to do maybe routines that you wouldn't possibly do because you want to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. Have you got any advice for the people that are watching this, that are kind of trying to decide whether to go down the route of being a full-time professional or not? Because obviously you never did. I just wondered if there's any advice you could offer people on that.
Well, I don't know. I don't really consider myself to be a performer. I'm more of a magic creator and a teacher of magic. I love to lecture for magicians. I will perform, but it's not my wheelhouse. Where I've spent my time and studies is in, learning information systems. I'm a security professional. I work as a cybersecurity analyst, and that's what I do for a living. I basically work in the financial industry, and ultimately I help protect banks. And I chose a job that was very analytical and something that I really enjoy to do. I like to puzzle over things, and that is a job that allows me to puzzle. But I've tried my hands in magic, and like I owned 3 magic stores at one point, and I enjoyed that. But I think for me, the computer industry It was a better way to be able to provide for my family, and being able to come up with magic routines and effects and provide that to the magic community is what I enjoy to do. That is my hobby. And I think of it this way, is that I may come up with a trick, and although I don't perform as much as I used to, or I actually right now I'm not really performing at all. I create, I show people, friends, magicians, and things like this, some of the things I create. But those people go out and show hundreds and hundreds of other audience members the tricks that I create. So I think it's fascinating. Now, I don't lose touch in the sense of what the audience wants and needs, because I do vet all of my material wherever I go. I'm just not getting paid for it. And I do it, like if I'm going to the store, if I'm at the barber shop, or, anywhere I go, I try to have an opportunity to show my stuff and make sure, is this relevant? Does this really work? Or is this just a pipe dream? A lot of times when you create magic, you can fall in love with your trick. You put it out on, into the marketplace, and everyone hates it. Well, why was that, right? Why was it that you thought it was the best thing ever, and then everyone thinks it's crap? So it's important to get real reactions from people and honest opinions.
And let's talk about creating, because when did you start to actually create magic? How long into your sort of journey was it that you started to realize that what you wanted to do was create your own magic?
When I first was getting involved in magic, it was really just learning and being able to do the tricks that were in books, learning the foundations and the principles. I never really thought that I would create magic. It wasn't even a thing, right? It was just that I love magic, and oh man, I love Paul Harris. I love Jay Sankey. I got David Ross' book. I got Bobo. I mean, I just want to learn that stuff, and I want to do it well. And then you start to get to a point where it's like, well, what if I tweak it? What if I do this? What if I do that? And then you start to develop your own ideas. My very first trick was terrible. I published it in Apocalypse, and it was called a Connect Four. And ultimately, what it was is a torn and restored playing card. It was quartered, and each spectator would sign their signature on each part of the ripped four pieces, and then I would slowly put it back. And it was very movie, very convoluted, and it was a start, right? It wasn't the best, but it was a start. And then from there, more ideas came. Some were, good, some were not. But as I continued to grow in magic, learned more about the fundamental principles of magic, learned more effects, and got exposed to more things, the more mature and the more cool my tricks became. You could definitely see, even if you just take just rubber band magic alone, if you look at some of the rubber band magic that was in Extreme Rubber Band Magic, my DVD, and some of the stuff that I put out recently with Penguin Magic, and some of the downloads in the last 6-7 years, you could see a drastic change in the maturity of the tricks that I've been coming up with recently, as opposed to 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago.
So the holy grail for magicians is to be a creator. I've talked about this on the channel before. It's kind of, you come into, as a new person who's coming into magic for the first time, you kind of look around and you look that there's certain people that are put on pedestals, and the people that are put on pedestals are the creators of magic. And so a lot of people, when they first get into magic, they want to create magic themselves. They want to be in a situation where they're creating magic for whatever reason. What advice would you give somebody who wants to create their own magic, either for themselves or ultimately to sell? I mean, is there a process you go through in terms of inspiration, and how do you take an idea and turn it into a finished product?
I think the very first thing that you want to do is learn all the fundamental principles of magic first. You want to read and get a strong foundation. You want to become a student of magic. The very first thing, you want to learn the classics of magic. I wanted to learn all of the major things, coins across, the invisible palm, all of the Matrix. I wanted to learn all of the classics and be able to do those the way that they were done classically, the way that the original creator invented it. I wanted to read about theories of magic and different principles and sleights and concepts. And all of these things help build a strong foundation so that when you're thinking, hey, I would love to be able to do this, well, what concepts, principles, sleights do I know already that can help me to achieve that? Right. And then you get to the point where it's like, there's nothing that can help me in this situation to help me to achieve that. Maybe I need to come up with something new. Um, so having a strong foundation is so, so very important. Being a fan of magicians, choosing certain magicians that you really admire and learn their creative process and flow. Read the instructions of the effect, read the effect in the book, but also read why they did the things that they did. Okay. Sometimes when someone's writing how a trick is done, they'll explain how they got there or the maturity of, this just didn't happen in 30 days. This happened over the course of 4 years and they got it to this point and they just felt like it wasn't right. And then they added this to it. And then you're only seeing the finished product after it's written in the book, but this effect may have been worked on for years. So understanding whether it's, you're choosing certain people that you like their creativity or you're just reading a book, read why they did the things they did. When I was getting involved in magic, my heroes were, and you're going to find a flow in this, right? Paul Harris, Jay Sankey. There's another one that's escaping me right now, but we'll get back to it. There were tons of guys that were just so very offbeat, and that was the people that I kind of really admired their offbeat thinking, and I wanted to be like them, right? So I created tricks that were like that, influenced by Paul Harris, Jay Sankey, and others. And then
yeah,
I think there's more, right? In order to have a strong foundation in creating, you not only have to have a strong foundation, you have to have a fan, but you also have to have a mentor that can help teach you, help guide you. I was lucky to have a few. I had Gene Mays, Ken Krenzel, Harry Lorraine. These were some of the guys that would constantly give me, input and suggestions and help in effects and tricks that I would come up and create with.
So lots of questions about what you've said there, and that was absolutely fantastic advice. First question, where do you find a mentor? That's a question that comes up on this channel an awful lot. It feels like there's less sessioning going on because of maybe the internet and social media. It's more difficult to I was speaking to Michael Rubenstein recently, and he was talking about how, every single week they met in this cafe and all the big guys in magic. That doesn't really seem to happen as much these days. So for somebody new coming into magic, how would they find a mentor?
Well, first and foremost, what Michael Rubenstein described was a place that had went through a few iterations. In New York, it was the Magic Townhouse at one point, the cafeteria, and then I was involved in Ruben's cafeteria on 38th and Madison. And that's where I met people like Gene Mays, Paul Harris, Frank Garcia, you name it, they were all there. And I think that birds of a feather do flock together. I think that being exposed to those greats helped me become a greater magician, a greater creator. And that was important. And the other thing is that you have to really have the desire to want to learn, and it's almost like you have to ask them out on a date, like that feeling of like being rejected. I remember I asked Derek Dingle to meet with me, and he said he would. And I went out of my way and I went to this bar and I waited for him. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. He apologized, but I kept on trying to meet up with him. And I kept on trying to meet up with these greats. I remember Bill Wish. I asked him to meet up at a diner with me. I drove like 45 minutes just to have lunch with him, just so I can, be exposed to magicians and learn from them. And he was gracious enough to do so. I find that even before COVID, social media has distanced people where they don't want to socially interact. There are people in New Jersey where I live that I've met at Penguin Magic expos and things like this, where I've said, listen, we live like an hour away. If you want to get together and session, I would be more than happy to session with you. And I would never get a call back. There are tons of magicians in this area that I'm like, if ever want to get together and session, we can session. Now I have my own crew of people that I hang out with and I session with, and all of them are all top names in magic. And that's another thing that helps us progress, is that we are able to bounce things off. If we have problems, we bring it to the group. And each one of these guys has their own DVDs and their own Penguin Live lectures and are on Penn and Teller. Each one is a star outright. And that's the birds of a feather flocking together. You have to surround yourself by people that are wanting to be greater than what they are.
That's great advice. And I do think that a lot of the time, if you reach out to somebody who you admire, if you reach out to somebody who is a big name in magic and say, hey, I was wondering if you could give me some advice on this, or if you get, I think that most people will actually go, yeah, I'd love to. I think it's getting past that. It's like you say, asking someone out on a date. I think it's getting past that hurdle in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah. I think if you're new and you really want to go further and to be exposed to people that know the information, you should definitely just go out on a limb and ask them, is it possible we can meet at a coffee shop and I can, show you what I'm working on? Maybe you can give me some hints or tips and see where it goes. Now, if they say no, ask someone else. Keep on asking, because eventually, you're going to find someone that's going to take an interest in you and help you. I'll tell you, if I didn't have people like Gene Mays in my life, my magic wouldn't have been as robust. In fact, when he moved to California and eventually he passed, there was like a period of time where I wasn't as creative. He was someone that was very helpful to me in my creative process. Yeah.
That's great. And before we talk about rubber bands, I want to talk to you about, you mentioned your DVD, Extreme Band Magic. Two things on that. One, a lot of people forget that it wasn't just Extreme Band Magic. Because you do so much band stuff now, a lot of people forget that you also had Extreme Card Magic and Extreme Coin Magic. And you originally came on my radar back in the day because I'm a coin guy, and I saw this DVD out, Extreme Coin Magic, and I bought it and I was like, man, this is my sort of material. This is knuckle busting, sleight of hand. This is amazing. This is the sort of stuff I want to learn. And a lot of people don't realize that. So I suppose I've got two questions. The first question is, what was it like filming? Because you filmed with L&L, didn't you? Yeah. What was it like filming at the L&L studios? Because that's something that people don't get a chance to do anymore. This is in a period of time, right, where you've made it. You get picked by L&L to do an L&L DVD set. That's it. You are the top dog. That must have been amazing, right?
Yeah. So what was great about that was he picked me up at the airport, Louis Falanga, and we went to have lunch overlooking a lake or something like that in Lake Tahoe. And it was so nice. We go to a specific house that's basically the L&L studios. His house is not too far away. And this is the house that I was staying at. And there was one section that was built like a studio. It had all this, the seating and the backdrops all set up. And then there was another area of the house where, there was like a dining room table and things like this. And for all of the video shooting, he had a personal chef come in that would cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think we filmed for 3 days. And so at the night, we would everyone would leave, and Lewis, myself, and whoever guests that were there would have a dinner that was cooked by a professional chef that came in. He was dressed in his own garb, and it was very, very cool. And it was a lot of work. It was many, many hours. We filmed 4 DVDs, and it was over 100 tricks. And it took me a good 9 months of preparing and placing each one of these tricks into an act and making sure that I could do them. And, you know, a lot of that stuff was very knuckle busting, especially the coins and the card magic. So it took quite some time to prepare myself to go to this video shoot and do everything in one shot. Very overwhelming. I would hate to do it again. To do that much magic in one short period of time. I mean, just recently I went to Ohio and I filmed 6 downloads, and that kind of was very similar to that feeling of, you know, doing the L&L video shoot, but it wasn't as you know, difficult. But it was fun. So I had a great time. And I think one of the highlights for me was after the video footage was shot and all that, Lewis brought me to his house. And in his house, he has all these guitars. He was a guitar collector, and he brought me into his library. And at that point, I don't think I remember ever seeing that many magic books in one place. It was amazing to just be able to sit in there and read books that I've never even seen before. So that was really fun. And seeing, you know, like first editions of specific books, and, you know, the Di Vernon Chronicles, where Di Vernon actually signed his name to the original one, the original book. It was like, it's really cool stuff.
That's amazing. But you did the card DVD and you did the coin DVD, which we can talk about in a second. But when you did the rubber band DVD, obviously that catapulted you into being known as Rubber Band Magic. When you bought that DVD out, though, there wasn't really much band material on published. I mean, Dan Harlan was probably the only guy. I mean, now you've got so much band magic, and a lot of it has been based off your creations. But when you bought your band DVD out, it was really just Dan Harlan, and that's it. So what made you decide to go down the route of creating rubber band magic? I mean, what made, because that's something that a lot of magicians haven't done. Like, how were you drawn to that? And also, how did you create all of the magic that you did? Because you talk about being well read and you talk about being a student of magic, but there's not much you can study when it comes to this genre, other than, as I say, Dan and a few of the bits and pieces. You're kind of reinventing the genre as you go. So, you know,
Yeah.
I'd love to know where all that came about from.
Right. So I think the first thing to mention is, before Extreme Rubber Band Magic, I did come out with Elastrix Volume 2. And that was written by Stephen Minch, and it had a handful of effects that I had created. That was, I think, where people first started taking note that rubber band magic could be more than just a puzzle. Of course, Dan Harlan's effects, you know, solidified that as well. A lot of the things that he was coming up with were really, really cool ideas that were magic effects. Prior to that, there weren't a lot of rubber band tricks that were really magical. They were very puzzly, or they felt like a puzzle, or they were really quick little tricks. Dan is the one that really changed that. Of course, Crazy Man's Handcuffs changed that as well. So, and you know, a lot of times people don't realize that rubber band tricks take time to evolve. I mean, the first Crazy Man's Handcuffs was created by Arthur Settertington, and it was in the new pentagram, and the handling was much different. It wasn't until Herb Zero changed the handling where it looked a little bit neater, and then you know, Michael Lamar gave it a new name and changed some phases into it, made it a little bit more of a comprehensive magical routine. And then David Copperfield did it on his special, and that's when everyone was like, "Whoa, you know, Crazy Man's Handcuffs, Crazy Man's Handcuffs." And so even with the jumping rubber band, it didn't happen just all at once. The jump was one, the being able to put a rubber band around the fingers, being able to put 2 rubber bands on. This all evolved over a period of years, until now, recently, where you're able to make a jump more than one time. That's a new development. So what's great about things is that it continues to evolve. We're able to continue to take it one step further. But there always had to be that one person that had the creative foresight to come up with something that nothing was ever created like that before, right? And so when I started getting involved in rubber band magic, first and foremost, I liked the prop because it was cheap. I could buy a bag of Staples tan rubber bands for less than $2, and I could keep it for 6 months. So it was a lot cheaper than like Gaff coins and things like that. So I like that. And then there weren't a lot of rubber band tricks that were out there. A lot of the people that know me early on in my magic career, like if you ask people from where I live, and they can tell you stories about me growing up in magic, they would tell you that Joe would recreate classic effects without knowing that they were classics. I would come up with tricks that were already classics, that were in books that were 20, 30, 40 years old. And people were like, first of all, they were like, wow, he's just coming up with this stuff on his own. He's creating tricks that are already tricks without even knowing that they're tricks. So that's cool, but he needs to read that stuff so he doesn't keep on reinventing the wheel. And don't put that stuff out because you'll look bad that you put out something that is already invented. So that's another thing about crediting and making sure that you do your due diligence of putting things out, making sure that you haven't reinvented something and taking away from the original creator. But it's also a good thing. It shows that you have the ability to create. You just aren't knowledgeable enough in what has been created so far. You need to get more books. You need to reach out to people that have these books and that know this stuff so that you can say, I'm not exactly sure, but it may be in this book. You might want to look into that. And they can lead you to the point where you can check out and see, is it the same thing? Is there slight differences? Does it warrant you putting it out as an effect with your name on it? Or do you have to just say, I reinvented something that was already created? So I was reinventing things early on, and people were kind of astonished by, wow, once he starts coming up with stuff that hasn't been created, he's going to really be onto something. Right? And so I found it extremely difficult in coin magic and card magic to come up with original ideas. I would spend this time to come up with someone to say, that's been done before. That's been done before. That's been done before. And so I still came up with things, and I still was able to find things that weren't created, but rubber band magic was completely different. Nobody was really creating, and I had the whole area to myself. It was me and Dan. And Dan stayed on his side, I stayed on mine, and we very rarely ever cross-created anything. Although he has influenced me, and I have created variations of his effects, giving him credit, and vice versa, and things like this. But for the most part, rubber band magic was an open wilderness. There was nothing that was being created. That's why, for example, Rubik's Cube magic, people were rushing into Rubik's Cube magic because it was a brand new thing and there was so much to be created. And rubber band magic was the same, and it is much harder now to create rubber band tricks than it was before. Especially now, since I've come up with so many different things, and others like Russell Leeds and Bacon Fire and Cyril Thomas and so many, Dan Haas, so many other, Hanson Chen, so many others that are coming up with rubber band tricks. It's becoming more and more difficult, but they're still out there, and you just have to find them. You have to search further. Yeah, that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
What I love about your material, and you said openly in this interview that you're not a performer and you're more of a creator, but you have a knack of making routines way more commercial. I am a working magician, and I love so many of your rubber band material. Let's take your linking rubber bands, for example. your 3-phase linking rubber bands that I do like every gig, walk around. The second I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I can set up linking rubber bands without doing the classic Michael Amar thing that everybody does. I can literally just show 2 bands, extend them in between my hands, and I can do this thing, which is amazing. And then I can do a second phase where they're dangling down from my fingers, and I can put, and that's super big. And you took linking rubber bands, linking headbands has been around forever. It's probably the other thing that people do. You know, you see, they do, and we'll talk about this later, but they do linking bands and they do crazy man's handcuffs, and that's it. But you took it and turned it on its head. And even though you're not a performer per se, you have an incredible knack of making things more commercial, which is just brilliant, in my opinion.
The problem that rubber band magic has always had is that it is a puzzle to be figured out, and that it doesn't necessarily follow the same structure of other types of close-up magic, like card magic and coin magic. Meaning, card magic, you have a beginning, middle, and end, multiple phases, killer climaxes. You can have a structured routine, okay? And you can also jazz out within routines. You could do an ambitious card and go wherever you like with it. You may know, the beginning and the end, but the middle, you can kind of, play it by ear and do what you like, or choose a structured approach. I guess what I'm getting at is in coin magic is the same thing. Rubber band magic was always like, boop, boop, or, through the thumb, and that was it. It wasn't a beginning, middle, and an end. It was just a quick thing that you would put in or insert into a larger routine that had nothing really to do with what you just did. It kind of didn't have a lot of places to go with it. You could talk about maybe like, things passing through and make it go through your thumb, and then you go on to something else. I wanted to say that rubber band magic should follow along the same lines of all other subgenres of close-up, which is it should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a killer climax. A lot of times people will create one thing and they'll want to sell that as a download. But how about invent a bunch of one things and put them together in a comprehensive routine that flows and that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and potentially a killer ending that you can end the trick with. In rubber band magic, it's hard to find that killer ending, but you can find them. It may not be like, oh my God, or it might be just a nice way, like icing on the cake, right? It might be just a nice way to end. For example, rubber exchange, being able to show both sides, that's my killer ending, right? And I end it in that way. I'm doing, the multiple changes of the rubber X changing. And then at the end, I say, oh, what's probably confusing is my side is yellow and your side is red. And then I end the routine there. So I switched it up. I basically go through a bunch of different phases of that effect, and I end it in a way that, like, whoa, wait, how did that happen? And I think it's important that rubber band magic adheres to those type of things. It's much better. So, for example, linking rubber bands. It's always been, I take the rubber band, I place it in. I take the 2 rubber bands, boom, it links and unlinks. Okay, and then you're done. There's not too much more you can go from there. And I thought Guy Vernon had Symphony of the Rings. He did a linking ring routine where he put together a collection of very absolutely like phenomenal ring links and unlinks, and he created a structured routine. And I said, rubber band magic should be like that. Let's start off with, a link, and then go into another link and go into, and then each time make it more and more either difficult or impossible to understand how that can happen. And then you got to leave them with something. And then in that routine, I leave them with breaking the rubber band, giving a pseudo explanation of how I do the trick, right? So I say, ultimately what you do, you have to put an opening in the band, and I break the rubber band, and then I put it back together again. And then I hand them the rubber band. So I say, I shouldn't tell you this, but this is how I do it. There's a spot in every rubber band right about here where I can break it open and put it back together again. And that's usually my killer ending to the Symphony of the Bands effect.
But you do that in so many of your routines. And the other thing that you do, like the gift is a perfect example. That's which is an older routine of yours, but it's amazing. I love it. Where, that whole thing is structured towards a logical finale that ends up with a giveaway. And one thing that I've noticed is you're not afraid to bring other props into your rubber band magic. Like I remember the first time I saw your band and linking ring, the steel ring, and I think you called it the ring. Oh my gosh. When I first saw that, I was like, this just is ridiculous. It's because what made you look at the gift and look at the ring, for example? What made you come up with the idea of going down that route of creating that wonderful finale to give to a member of the audience and bringing a different prop into the into the whole thing, which just takes it to an entirely other level?
I think I wanted something that played a little bit bigger. And I remember a few of my friends were working on Ring and String. And I was also exposed to some of the New York magicians like Eric DeCamps, who has a really good ring move where he just basically goes like this, and the string goes from this rung to this rung. So he's like this, and it just pops up from here to here. And I thought that was phenomenal. And then I said, wow, you can actually do that with a rubber band. And then all of the phases came out from that. I said, what if I do Crazy Man's handcuffs against the ring? And then I wasn't the first to come up with something like that. I think Paul Daniels did it against a wine glass in Apocalypse. And there's so many others that have used the Crazy Man's handcuffs to do it off of other objects. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it looked absolutely amazing. So what advice would you give somebody that's new into magic, or not even that new, but they've been in magic for a while? They do card routines, they do coin routines, they want to do rubber band magic. Like you said, there's so much material that you can look at now. Where should people start? Because we talked about this off camera, I've been quite vocal on this channel that Crazy Man's handcuffs, people should keep away from Crazy Man's handcuffs, because it's like the amount of gigs that I go to and I take out let me show you something with the rubber band. Oh, you're going to do that. Laymen even do this thing. They go, oh, you're going to do that, are you? It's like every working pro has done that for so long. And there's so much more you can do with rubber bands rather than that. So first of all, do you agree with me on that? And second of all,
so here's the thing, right? I normally don't tip this anywhere. This is something I usually just do for my own audiences. I never share this anywhere, but I'm going to actually teach you an underground method of Crazy Man's handcuffs. And I'm going to use these two rubber bands here. And the idea is you want to place it on the second finger. It changes everything. So now your hands are like this, and watch, I place this rubber band inside here, give a little pull, and it goes through just like that. So Crazy Man's handcuffs is like the pick a card to card magic. Ultimately, I've seen that one before. It's a great effect. It's wonderful. I in the ring, I have many variations of Crazy Man's handcuffs, and I think it has a place in rubber band magic. But there are so many other things, and a lot of times people will throw all of rubber band magic out just for that trick. And there's so much more that is available and possible to do with rubber band magic. It's a great effect, but it's somewhat overused a lot of times, or it's used to undersell all rubber band magic.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. So where should people start? They want to do rubber band magic. They want to be unique. What should they like? Are there particular principles or things that they should study before anything else?
So I used to say go with extreme rubber band magic, but I added a Penguin Live lecture to I did a Penguin Live lecture with Penguin Magic, And that's about a 4-hour download that goes over everything. And it was done maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and no, 3 or 4 years ago. And it is probably one of the most comprehensive rubber band sessions. And on there, it's me, Dan Harlan. I have Hanson Chen there, Michael Goldman, and I go over all of my effects, and I also discuss the theory of rubber band magic, some of the terminology that I've come up with to help explain rubber band magic. It's like looking inside the hood of a car and seeing how all of it works, right? And the other thing is too, is that a lot of times people, magicians, creators can come up with a rubber band trick and they just happen across an idea and they don't really thoroughly understand the theories behind it. And in this session, I go into the theories. I go into the different. I have a model in place to explain how rubber band magic works. That there are displays and setups and anchors and different things, releases, ending positions, and all this type of stuff that explains how a rubber band trick is done. And ultimately, if you wanted to summarize or sum up what a rubber band trick is, it's basically taking a configuration, modifying it to another configuration, and then ultimately transitioning back to that original configuration. So you have a setup, you modify it in some way, and then either slowly or over a period of a few transitions, you go back to your original setup. And that pretty much summarizes most of rubber band magic.
That's actually a very, very good point. Yeah, it really does. It really does.
So that is a great place to start because there's so much material on there and you'll get a great foundation. And then there's so many others and myself that had come up with downloads that teach specific concepts. One of the things that I do when I put out my downloads is I don't give you just one trick. I don't give you a thumb penetration and then sell it for $3. I come up with a new concept and then I give you 6, 7, 8, 14, 15 different variations of how to use this new concept because rubber band magic is still new and we're still developing its sleights. Ultimately, there's going to get to a point where all of the sleights have been developed and now you're left with the tools. And now create tools with the given sleights that are available. It's going to get to the point where rubber band magic is going to move into a place where you're going to have multiple transitions happening in one hold. So you're going to set up and then you're going to be able to do many different things all in one setup, multiple transitions. And you're already seeing that stuff with my effects and Cyril Thomas's effect. Cyril is another one that Dr. Cyril Thomas, who is creating a lot of effects that you can have multiple transitions where the rubber band will go one way, and then back and forth. And it's just amazing stuff. And again, I'm coming up with that kind of stuff too. So rubber band magic is evolving with reps, multiple repetitions of things, and multiple iterations. So that's very cool. Combos is what I usually call them. Combo moves. Being able to set up in one position and being able to combo off of that so that your hands are not moving. Like for example, in Symphony of the Rings, I'm able to link, unlink, link, unlink 3 times in one setup.
Yeah.
And that's what really had magicians like take note. Whoa, how is he able to do it 3 times without changing his hands? Right? So that's really cool.
It really is. So what's your favorite band trick that you've ever created? You must have created so many rubber band routines now that you must have forgotten some of them, I imagine. I don't know. I mean, you've created so many. What's your favorite?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's the most newest, but Dino is probably one of I feel like one of my favorite accomplishments because it's just so different than all other kind of rubber band magic. It actually feels like real magic. Rubber band wrapped around the fingers like this. And watch. And it penetrates right through. And then I don't have a spectator's hand here, but being able to take the rubber band, wrap it around their hand, and have it penetrate through. So Dino is a new concept that I'm really excited about, that I like. But like all my downloads recently through Penguin Magic, they're comprehensive, either they're comprehensive routines or they're a concept that teaches many variations and things like that.
That's brilliant. And is that available through Penguin now? Is it
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one. I'm going to be, as soon as this interview's ended, I'm going to be rushing off and visiting
yeah,
Penguin.
it actually won Penguin's Download of the Year last year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. You showed me something a little while ago that I absolutely loved as well, with the traffic lights. I mean, you're constantly coming up with stuff. It's just, I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just brilliant. I can think of so many band routines that I do that you are responsible for. It's just.
Yeah. If you could do me a favor, if you could scratch out the traffic light, because I haven't published that.
Okay, hang on. I'll start that again. No problem. Boom. Hang on. Yeah, you've brought out so many wonderful band routines. I'm trying to think of all of the ones that I do, and almost everything that I do is your material, Joe. It really is. And the thing is, one thing that I've noticed is you take plots from other types of magic and you bring it into rubber bands, and you see that over and over again. One that I do is where you take the rubber band and it penetrates through the hand and penetrates down through the hand multiple times, but you see it so many times. Is that a conscious thing? Did you kind of look at coin magic and go, well, what plots in coin magic can I bring into rubber bands?
Yeah, so I was really influenced by Russell Lead. He was one of the first to take rubber band magic and come up with effects that looked like coin magic, or used coin magic as an influence to come up with his rubber band magic. So I was like, I think he's onto something here. And I started coming up with ideas. And so a lot of effects have that kind of feeling. And what I found, the discovery that I came across, is that card magic, coin magic, everything you could think of in close-up magic can be applied to rubber band magic, but not the reverse. There's, like, you name it, any type of card plot can somehow be created, for the most part, with rubber band magic. I think where you would stop the analogy is, like a card at any number. You can't do that with rubber bands. But for like, I've come up with effects and variations that ultimately I will be putting out on out in the market, like Oil and Water, Triumph, Out of This World, Cannibal bands, you name it. Like, you can come up with many different tricks. A wild band, like wild coin, you can come up with many different routines using the concepts or the structure of the routine that rubber coins and cards has, and apply it to rubber band magic. It works, and some of it's great. Just recently, I filmed 6 downloads with Penguin Magic that should be being released very soon. They're going to probably stagger them. But in one of them, I'm showcasing an ambitious rubber band trick. Right? So, yeah, it can be done. You just have to think outside of the box and say, well, how would you do an ambitious rubber band trick? What would that look like? You don't have a deck of cards. So how would a rubber band trick keep on coming to the top? So here's the performance of the ambitious rubber band. People always ask me, why do I keep a red rubber band on the other hand? Well, this particular band doesn't like to play well with others. You see, if I place it on with these, it always wants to be the star of the show. No matter how many times I put it down there, it always wants to jump up to the top. Now, if we use another rubber band like this blue one, and I give a little shake, it still wants to be the star of the show.
That's great. That is absolutely fantastic. That is so good. So here's a question for you. Do you have any advice for magicians that are wanting to release their own magic? So you initially released a whole bunch of stuff through L&L. You talked about your first book being put out by Stephen Minch. You now do a lot with Penguin Magic. You've never really self-published anything, as far as I'm aware, in terms of just bringing it out and bypassing all of the different magic companies. Most magicians want to create, like I said before, they want to create magic. Do you have any advice in terms of if somebody's got a trick and they feel it's ready, how they can bring that to market?
I think, of course, if you go back in my history, I've always worked with someone, right? Even in the beginning, I worked with Xanadu. Then I worked with L&L Publishing. I worked with Magico with Stephen Minch to write that. I've also worked with Mayor Yedid, putting out Jumper and The Ring. That was great. And then I also published a lot of effects in other people's books and periodicals. Back then, it was a contribution. You wouldn't get paid for that kind of stuff. It was just, you wanted to help them out and give them effect. But it depends, like those different situations, the money changed a little bit. I think today the pay for creators is a little bit better than it used to be back in the day. Back in the day, they give you $500, and whether it was bad or good, that's what you got. These days, you're getting more of a royalty with a lot of the magic companies. And so when I put out my rubber bands, I wanted a bunch of rubber band tricks to go along with it. So effects like the gift, rubber exchange, paradigm shift, bandistry, these type of effects I put out on my own. And it's a lot of work to put them out on your own. You have to work with someone to edit, unless you're going to edit yourself, and that's very difficult at times, especially if you have a full-time job, kids at home or whatever. That could be very difficult. So it was just too much time and effort to do it on my own, and being able to market the downloads through Murphy's and through Penguin, I didn't get as much as I thought I would. So when I did the next batch of downloads with Murphy's, with Penguin, let's scratch it. So when I did the next batch with Penguin, they really marketed it. I didn't get as much of a royalty than if I were to put it out on my own, but they gave me a percentage, which I was happy with. And ultimately, all of these were to advertise my bands, right? So here's why I put out my rubber band magic. One, to be recognized for the contributions that I've created, right? And so I want to be acknowledged for the things that I invent and create, which brings me joy. I want other people to do the effects that I like and really enjoy them. That brings me joy. I have rubber bands that I sell, and that's a supplemental thing that I do as a side gig. And I like the fact that I can offer a quality product and make money on it. I don't get rich on it, but it's nice, pocket change to have that I enjoy. So all of this helps, make the machine move. And I like to put out my my downloads. I like to be relevant. I like to continue to stay relevant. So every year I put out a few effects. I found a good company to work with, a company that I can, that I respect, that I feel is loyal, that has always treated me well, and I don't feel that I'm being ripped off at. So once I find that, Penguin Magic has been that for me. I work with them, and I've been consistent with them for the last, 5 or 6 years, and we work well together. And they're committed to putting out some of my stuff every year. Basically, we've been working where each year I fly out to Ohio, or if we're at a Penguin Expo, I'll do some stuff at the Penguin Expo. But it works well. So find a company that you really feel comfortable with, that will work with you, that will treat you right, and stay with them and be loyal.
I've spoken to Sean several times, Sean Dunn at Penguin. He's very passionate about making sure that artists are looked after and that they're putting out quality products. Like, I've talked on this channel about people that put out substandard downloads, but as far as I can see, Penguin are trying to do everything in their power to make sure that the stuff that they put out is just A1.
Right. And you know what? They have costs. They have editing costs, they have studio costs, they have people that do the accounting that they have to pay. They have a whole machine that they have to pay for. Penguin Magic is not just one person, it's many people. And so they say, hey, look, we're going to create this structure where it's going to be good for the artist, but it has to make sense for us. And we're not going to gouge you and take more than what we can, but we're going to lay it out, and this is what it is. And that is completely understandable, and I like that.
Well, before we wrap this up, I've got two last questions for you, Joe. And the first question, you mentioned your rubber bands that you put out, and you've got lots of rubber bands. I have packets all over. If you saw my office, I've got literally your rubber bands everywhere. But you also said in the beginning of the interview that one of the reasons that you love rubber band magic is because it was cheap. You could go and buy yourself some rubber bands in the store, and then you didn't have to spend anything else. So why should somebody who's getting into rubber band magic buy your Elastroflex rubber bands as opposed to spending a few dollars down Staples?
Well, I think first and foremost, the ability to have many colored rubber bands changes the whole dynamic. Just like with a deck of cards, you have so many facets of a deck of cards. You have, clubs, hearts, spades, diamonds. You have all the different, pips and court cards and things like this that gives you variations of things that you can do. You can tell so many different stories. So with only having 10 rubber bands, there's only one story to really tell. Now that with my product line, I have 18 different colors, you could tell stories about flags. You can tell a story about, a boy and a girl if you have a pink rubber band, right? So now you could do Crazy Man's Handcuffs that actually means something, where like someone goes on a date with another person and it doesn't work, but ultimately it will work, and things like this. You can now have storylines that you can tell. The other thing is that they're a professional product. Like they don't break as easily. They stretch longer. They have a nice shine to them. They smell nice. They're a quality product, and they're able to stretch further and longer. And so a lot of the routines I create basically need my rubber bands because the Elastroflex that I put on them allows them to be less rubbery. It's more like a silicone, so they can glide or slide across each other. So many effects, like for example, I had an effect called Paradigm Shift, where I take two different colored rubber bands and wrap them around the hand like this. So I show you the pink and the blue, and I give a little shake, and they change places, right? And you could do this over and over again, where you take the pink and the blue and give a little shake, and they change places. And so if you use normal rubber bands, that's not going to work. The rubber is going to cause it to bind against each other, and it's not going to allow them to slide through each other. And so new possibilities of rubber band tricks are available to you now that you're not using rubber bands that grip against each other, but more glide and slide. The other thing with the gliding and sliding is friction is what actually causes the rubber bands to break. If it's rubber and they're constantly rubbing against each other, it's going to cause the rubber bands to break much easier. So now when you're doing these configurations where you're switching them over and over and over again, the gliding makes it less likely for the rubber bands to break.
And the other advantage of them, my opening routine when I do band magic is something that you published a while ago, where you've got lots of different colored bands, and I just say pick a band, and they pick a band, and I literally just pull it through my hand about the band that they name, which is one of yours. You couldn't do that if you just had, it's like you're saying, having so many different colors, it opens up so many different possibilities.
Yes.
Awesome. So my last question for you, and this is a question that I ask everyone I interview on the channel, is what's next? And what I mean by that is you've been in magic for a long time, and your legacy is set. If you decided to retire tomorrow, never produce another magic trick again, just disappear from the community, people would still be talking about Joe Rindfleisch for a very, 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 very long time to come. And the routines that are created over the next years and months and decades even are going to be created based on the stuff that you've published up until this point. Your legacy is set. But knowing you as well as I do, I'm pretty sure that you're not going to slow down anytime soon, and that you've got a million other things that you're going to be creating and releasing. So yeah, what's next? Is there anything on your magical bucket list that you haven't done yet that you want to do?
Well, I think that rubber band magic is still, a genre that is being developed, and I'm not done thinking in that area. I want to continue to try to get as much as possible out of it. There are times where maybe I get a little frustrated and want to step away, and so I move back into coins, and play around with coins. I have coins here, and I picked up a cylinder and coin just to play around with recently, and I'm always playing around with props, and so yes, there's more to be done, and I think I have this knowing in my gut that I should write a book on rubber band magic. If there's anyone that should do it, it's probably me. It's just a little overwhelming to think, this would be a comprehensive thing that would take years to accomplish. And I started to gather all of the effects that I've created throughout the years, and I write them down on a piece of paper, or like in the computer, and I'm writing it down to see what does that really look like. What is all the stuff that I created with rubber bands, where it lives in publishing, like in the publishing world? Where does that live? I came out with Extreme Rubber Band Magic, Elastrix. There was the IMS videos. Like there's periodicals that I put rubber band magic in different places. Where does all my stuff live? And basically capture that on paper of what is all the stuff that I've created, and all the stuff that I have ready to publish. Like I said, I come up with effects all the time with Penguin. So I have a huge queue of effects that I'm waiting to publish. And I don't put them all out at once. I'll put a few out each year. So I have probably 30 or 40 effects that still need to come out. And more effects that are being created in that assembly line. But I think that I kind of want to see what a rubber band book would look like. And that's why I'm kind of writing down a list of all of my stuff. And it's taking time. And it would be a huge undertaking. But maybe I might want to do something like that.
There's never been a rubber band book before, has there?
No, just the pamphlets, like Elastrix and Elastrix Volume 2. And I think what really would need to be done is to create, just like in Card College, where you show the hands and you identify every piece of the hand. I would have to identify all the different terminology associated with rubber band magic. I would have to talk about wrist tilts and heel heel displays and anchors, and talking about posting and clawing. These are terms that I've created for rubber band magic. I think we would need to really develop a structured terminology if I was to create a book on rubber band magic, because it's the spatial configurations of a rubber band is so difficult to really get sometimes, and it's important to get that right. So if I were to come up with a book on rubber band magic, it would definitely need a lot of time and effort to get it right, and to make sure that people could read it and understand how to do it.
Well, I, for one, would be the first person at the front of the queue putting my credit card details in, Joe. Honestly, if you ever got a chance to do that, that would be amazing. That really would. That really would. And it would be a massive undertaking, especially as you're busy as it is. You've got a family, you've got 4 kids, you've got a full-time job, you're creating magic all the time, you're producing your rubber bands. I don't even know how you find time to even create anything. I've got to be honest with you. I'm glad you do, But, you know, as somebody who's a father of just 2 kids, I don't know how you juggle everything, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, priorities. And, you know, I guess the funniest thing, I wrote about this in a blog once, is that I don't know balance. The only thing I know is when I'm out of balance and compensating when that happens. You know, balance is this unattainable thing. It's really just like a tightrope walker. He uses the pole to see when he's out of balance and he compensates. And that's what I try to do. If I feel like I'm leaning too much into this one area and something is being neglected, I need to pull in the reins. And, you know, everything is important to me. You know, family is important. My marriage is important. Creating is important. You know, working, you know, roof over my head. All of these things are important. Raising my kids, spending time with them and doing things with them so they feel that they had my attention growing up as a child. All of these things are so important. And you can't always get it right all the time. And that's when you have to be able to you know, compensate when those things get off track.
You know what? That's the best piece of advice I've ever heard on that subject. That is absolutely amazing. And a fantastic place to end the interview. Joe, I really appreciate it. If people want to check out all your material, you don't have your own website for this. It's all through Penguin Magic, right?
Yeah, right now, you would definitely go to Penguin Magic. They have all of my downloads there, and rubber bands, so you can get them there.
So go into Penguin, type in Joe Rindfleisch. If somebody's never seen any of your material before, what is the first download that they should get?
The Penguin Live Lecture.
The Penguin Live Lecture.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then after that would probably be Rubber Delusion, which is amazing, and then Dino, and then everything else.
Definitely everything else. Start with the Penguin Live. Got it. Right. Okay. That's cool. Guys, if you haven't checked out Joe's material, please do so. He is amazing. And if you learn how to do rubber band magic properly and not just do crazy man's handcuffs, it will genuinely you know, it'll help you so much as a magician. It really will. And Joe, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I know how busy you are, as we've just talked about how busy you are. So the fact that you found time to come on here, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No problem.
You're amazing. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll be back again tomorrow. Joe, thank you. Guys, have a great day. Bye.